Hello, everybody, and welcome to At the Coalface Live with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It's awesome to be back here with you again, as I am every single Friday afternoon, New Zealand time, 4 p.m. A few minutes late today, so sorry about that. But it is fantastic to be with you here on the 21st of January, 2022. It is quite amazing that we are already nearly at the end of January already. You know, we're going to blink and it's going to be back into Christmas time. It's going to be back into the run for Christmas for 2022. So time seems to be flying by, and it's a very, very exciting time to be in digital and e-commerce. Now, as a normal course of business, I would typically, with these live streams, which go out to LinkedIn, they go out to YouTube, and they go out to Facebook Live, I would typically cover off the news of the week. But what I found is, because LinkedIn in particular doesn't vig live like they used to, it just doesn't, the live streams just don't get fantastic visibility. And as a result of that, the written posts, the posts with images, and pre-recorded video that is uploaded to LinkedIn tends to get much better reach, gets much better engagement, a better involvement from the crowd, because LinkedIn puts it out there to much more of your sort of connection list or your following list. Now, as a result of that, what I did last Friday, is I started to dig a little bit deeper into some more topical elements of what I do and my take on things. And last week we covered off my Fit for Commerce framework that we run through Greenwood Consulting, high level what that looks like, high level components of how that works. And we walk through even a bit of a presentation of how those components fit together and how those elements we bring to the table when we're doing that consulting across major digital transformation projects, major omni-channel projects, major e-commerce projects with our clients, and how that all interleaves together to ensure, or at least create the opportunity for a fantastic project or program of work outcome. And I shared a lot of my thinking around that and how that's been developed over the last 20 years of me doing this. And this week we're going to do something similar, in the sense of doing something more topical in nature. Now, I will draw on some news of the week to feed into this particular topic, but it won't be just going through a list of 20 news articles and giving my quick take or my hot takes on those news articles or those news items of the week. So what I wanted to talk about this week, because it has been getting just an overwhelming amount of attention in the digital press, e-commerce, omni-channel, retail tech press, is the concept of Web3 and all of the other related tangential technologies and concepts that are part and parcel of Web3. So we're talking Metaverse, we're talking crypto, we're talking NFTs, we're talking smart contracts, we're talking virtual worlds and VR, AR, XR for mixed reality. We're talking a lot of 3D technology. A lot of things are coming together all at the same time, combined with massive investments in the space by every major tech player, and even all the minor tech players seem to be rushing headlong at this. Plus, we have some of the biggest retailers in the world starting to jump on the Web3 bandwagon as the next iteration of the internet. And I believe that Web3 has the power to completely disrupt modern digital commerce. It has the ability to completely upend what we've known as e-commerce for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The way in which we do commerce, the areas that we do commerce in, it stands to be disrupted very, very rapidly as mass retail adoption starts to happen within the metaverse. Now, do I think this is going to happen tomorrow? No. Do I think it's a bit hypey? Yes. Do I think that the metaverse, as of right this moment, is vaporware for the most part? Yes. Do I think that it's a lot of buzzwords and that this is being driven largely by investors that have something to gain if the metaverse gains traction, or the biggest tech companies in the world, if they can create their own walled garden metaverses of their own, then obviously it benefits them. So we have a lot of stakeholders here who have a lot invested in the metaverse and Web3 technologies, that if it goes the way that it's looking like it's going to go, they stand to make billions and billions of dollars. and create levels of lock-in to their experiences that are unique to them. So this is no different to in the Wild West early days of the internet, when everybody was trying to figure this whole internet thing out. And then when mobile became the primary device that people access and interact with the internet and each other, then it makes perfect sense that this is the next evolution of the internet. This is the next version of the internet, is the metaverse. Hey, Sam, great to have you along for the ride today. And so I've been doing, I've been tangentially involved with everything to do with Web3 and following it, for the last, say 2 years. I've been following a lot of the underlying tech that is really taking us to where we're at in the phase of Web3, but I had never invested in crypto before. I was pretty public about that. I had major questions and concerns about the long-term viability of crypto. Now, with the coming of Web3, particularly, and web apps being built out on the blockchain, and all of the new use cases that are becoming very, very apparent almost daily, I can see now how particularly the utility-based cryptocurrencies have a value just in the network capabilities themselves and in the blockchain technologies. That's what actually gives them the value, as opposed to being a pure store of value like a Bitcoin. So I want to talk a little bit about that today as well. There's some serious excitement building in the Web3 space, and it's really reached a fever pitch over the last week in particular, and I do want to address that. So earlier in the week, we had a major report come out of CNBC that Walmart was going to be going all in on the metaverse, and they were looking to create their own cryptocurrency. Now, the way that CNBC broke this was because they were following registrations with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. They realized that Walmart was filing all of these trademark applications on behalf of its intellectual property, its brand, digital assets, and then also some of the work that it was doing behind the scenes from a cryptocurrency perspective, and some of the patents that they were trying to register around some of the tech that they're developing in their sort of skunkworks division of the business. So whenever the world's largest retailer says or signals that they're going to be going all in on the metaverse, it's probably time to at least pay a little bit of attention to it. And then later in the week, I think it was 2 days ago, The Verge broke the story that Microsoft was going to buy Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion. Now, that's a large chunk of change. It's Microsoft's largest acquisition since their acquisition, I think it was in 2015 or 2016, of LinkedIn for $26 billion. Hey, Kimberly, fantastic to have you along for the ride today. So obviously, this is a massive investment by Microsoft. Microsoft has made no bones about the fact that they see massive opportunity in the coming metaverse, metaverses, however you want to say it. And they see massive opportunity, obviously, in the crypto space, the NFT space, and the like. And all of this is going to be driven by 3D immersive mixed reality experiences. And obviously, who better to help you leapfrog your competition than a massive game studio, game behemoth? It's not even just a game studio. They own massive franchises around major games. They develop games. They develop all of the underlying 3D world technology. There's a lot going on over at Activision Blizzard, and it makes absolute sense if Microsoft sees that the metaverse is going to be the future of computing, the future of the internet, the next generation of the internet, then it makes absolute sense that they would go out and buy not only a lot of the technology stack that's involved, but a lot of the IP, the underlying IP that Activision Blizzard owns, a lot of the patents that they own, a lot of the technology that they own. But secondarily, this space is so hot right now, and there are so few specialists in the Web3 space right now, because I liken it to trying to change the wheels on a car while it's going down the motorway at 100 kilometers an hour. Every single one of us, even those of us that are highly technical and have worked in the web space for many, many years, we're all trying to figure this thing out as we go along. We're all trying to contribute to it. We're all trying to make sure that it goes in a good direction. We all know how The Matrix, the movie, worked out. Didn't work out so well in many respects. So, at the end of the day, there is, potential dark sides to anything where, an environment could be created digitally that would cause humans to want to live in a digital world full time and effectively disconnect from the real physical world, because the joy and the fun and the excitement that they get out of the digital world outstrips what they feel like they could get in the physical world. So is there a potential dark side to this? I think there probably is, but setting the ethical and moral questions aside for the moment, this tech is coming. It's being built out very fast. billions of dollars are being invested into it. So none of us are going to be able to escape this. So the best that we can do is to try to shape its direction, to try to contribute to the discussion, to try to raise awareness about what the positive, the pros, the cons around this technology, how it has the opportunity to build wealth, how it has the opportunity to create new ways of engaging with audiences and creating with audiences, how audiences themselves can interact with each other across these new environments, these new digital environments. So there's a lot at stake here, and there's a lot at play here. And I by no means consider myself an absolute expert, but I do know for the last 2-3 months I've been digging pretty deep into this whole Web3 thing. And we're going to be releasing a couple of podcast episodes coming up with some people that have more expertise in the space than I do. But because the underlying tech that is going into Web3 is still built on a lot of fundamental computer engineering and software engineering concepts, a lot of this I do understand. Once we start to dig into it, maybe I don't understand necessarily the crypto algorithms that are used on a specific blockchain, because when I start to read those types of white papers and things like that, it starts to go over my head and my eyes start to glaze over. But I'm not that technical. So I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, but I'm also a highly technical solution architect that's worked across web systems for many, many years. And as a result of that, I have a unique lens on this whole Web3 thing as it starts to intersect with e-commerce, as it starts to intersect with omnichannel, as it starts to intersect with the retail space, particularly retail tech space. Then I can start to see some patterns emerge around Web3 and retail that are unique to me because I'm looking at it through quite a unique lens. And so that's a little bit about what I want to talk about today. I'm going to be talking about this a lot more on the podcast. I'm going to be talking about this a lot more through my content, because I think that the rate of change in the Web3 space is so fast, and it is the amount of investment going into this space is so intense that I think the change we're going to see, if we go from today, 21st of January, 2021, if we look back on this 2022 or 21st January 2022. I don't know why I said 2021. If we looked at 21 January 2023 and we look back on this episode, the amount of maturity that will come to the Web3 space in only 12 months will be intense. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand this at as deep a level as I can. I'm trying to break it down, make it accessible, make the content accessible to my audience and to as wide of an audience as possible. I'm trying to make sure that I stay ahead of the curve so that when brands that come to work with me and I start to help them understand technology and e-commerce and omnichannel, I don't want them to miss out on future opportunities, and making sure that they get the groundwork in place to be able to execute and capitalize on these future opportunities. But we want to keep one foot in the present, and we want to keep one foot in the future, right? And so that's kind of what my goal is to understand the now, understand exactly where we are today, understand what the future might look like, knowing that we're still in the process of building it, and we all have something to contribute to it. So I'm super excited about it. And then we had another piece of news that came out this week, and this was brought to my attention by Rick Watson on LinkedIn. He did a really, really amazing post about it today, and it was about Amazon's new style department store concept being built out in LA. And this is going to use a lot of retail tech that is very native to Amazon, but they're going to be doing things that major retailers have never, ever done before, and merging the online and offline experience with product recommendations in store, the merchandising, the clienteling, the way that they're going to interact with the Amazon mobile app in the physical store, etc. They're doing a lot of groundbreaking work here. And so go and check out that post by Rick Watson about the Amazon style department store that's coming out. He breaks that down quite specifically, but after I read his post, I was left thinking about two things. One is we're going to have a pretty rapid bifurcation over the next, say, 5 years, whereby major retailers, and particularly if they've historically been digital pure plays, where they come into the physical retail space and they try to digitalize every single aspect of the physical retail space. Then we have the other side of the coin, which is the metaverse, and where brands will either have to make a decision. Hey, do we go kind of all in on this retail tech, this physical retail tech that kind of brings this digital experience layer to the physical shopping experience like Amazon is looking to do with their style stores? Or do we go all in on the metaverse? Hey, look, we're trying to create a digital shopping experience in a 3D digital environment instead? So, or do we try to do a little bit of both? And so I think retailers are going to have, they're going to be challenged on all fronts. They're going to have massive brands with very, very deep pockets going after the retail experience and trying to enrich it and create a much more engaging physical experience with digital tech, and the digital tech that bridges the gap between the physical and the virtual environment. But then we're going to have brands that are going to go all in on the metaverse, and they're going to try to create very, very rich and engaging, fully digital, fully 3D, fully VR shopping and engagement environments in their own right. Now, we're also going to have a scenario whereby I think that the metaverse, as it starts to emerge out of this sort of ethereal thing that is today, as it starts to mature, we're going to get to a place where major brands have to make a decision. And they're going to have to make a decision between joining an existing metaverse player, whether that be a social platform like Facebook, who wants to create their own, VR environment inside their Facebook walled garden, whether they build out their own version of the metaverse and their own store on the back of existing 3D technology, existing VR technology, or they do both. And so really that mirrors what brands have a choice of today. So even in a Web2 world, which is the current sort of digital world, we see this 2D digital world that we're accessing through, a mouse, a screen, a keyboard. Brands today, there's many, many brands out there that start and end and die as, say, an Amazon only brand. So they've never had their own e-commerce website. They've never ever had an owned environment to interact with their end customers. They've always done it through earned channels or rented channels or leased channels. So they're selling through social channels like Facebook and Instagram. They're selling through marketplaces like Amazon and eBay and Catch and Trade Me. They're selling on other people's channels or in other people's worlds. Now, the best brands typically will sell across not only owned channels, but rented or leased channels. And so they have their own e-commerce website. They maybe even have their own physical stores. And then they also sell across leased or rented digital channels like social and like marketplaces. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a very, very similar approach happen when the metaverse sort of goes much more mainstream and people are spending a lot more time in 3D digital environments. We're going to see a lot of the same thing. If you're a big brand with deep pockets like a Walmart, then by all means, you're probably going to create your own immersive 3D experiences within your own unique metaverse with your own unique digital assets, your own cryptocurrency. Basically, the end-to-end digital experience can begin and end with the likes of a Walmart and those major brands. And if you're in a 3D space, then just like on your screen today, in your browser, you have 5 or 6 tabs open in your browser. You might have 5 or 6 e-commerce websites for major brands open at the same time. You might have Amazon open in a tab. You might have Trade Me open in a tab. You might have Nike Direct open in a tab. You might have some major local retailers open in different tabs, and you might be shopping across these different tabs that are open in your browser. Well, I see a 3D environment that is going to emulate this quite strongly. And then, in one of your tabs in your browser today, you have Facebook open or other social media channels like LinkedIn open. Well, I see the future metaverse or multiple metaverses being created whereby, when you're in a full 3D environment, you'll be able to select, okay, do I want to enter Walmart's metaverse? Do I want to enter the Facebook metaverse? Do I want to enter Nike's metaverse? Do I want to enter these metaverses? But these guys will also have strong brand presences in other metaverses. So if you think for a moment that Nike's going to build their own metaverse, but they're not going to be present in other brands' metaverses, you're wrong, because at the moment you see Nike, they advertise across Google's platforms, they advertise across Facebook's platforms, they advertise on other people's properties across the internet, but they've also got their own properties. It's going to be exactly the same thing in the metaverse. You're going to be able to go into a dedicated Nike metaverse that they're going to create a fully enclosed, fully holistic, end-to-end 3D digital experience where you can engage with them, where you can shop with them, where you can do everything within the Nike metaverse. But you're also going to have strong Nike brand representation and experiences that are linked to the Facebook metaverse. So if you go into the Facebook experience, that 3D digital experience, you will see Nike represented there. You will see the likes of Walmart represented there. So I don't think it's an either or scenario. I think it's going to be an and scenario, just like it's an and scenario today. Now, there will be some brands that will only play and will only sell and will only create a metaverse-like or a virtual reality experience inside other people's spaces. So just like today, there are some brands that only sell on Amazon. They started out on Amazon and they don't have their own website. Some brands only sell on social, so they'll sell on a Facebook shop, or they'll sell on an Instagram shop, but they don't have their own e-commerce website. So will some brands start and end inside of someone else's metaverse, like Zuckerberg's metaverse inside Facebook? Absolutely. They won't build out a full-blown 3D experience of their own because of the cost and complexity and time to get to market there. So they will simply play inside of someone else's sandbox and sell inside of someone else's sandbox. So we're going to have some really, really interesting scenarios start to play out here, where e-commerce brands, as I said, we're going to get a scenario where some brands are they're still perhaps going to have a 2D e-commerce website as we start to migrate towards a more metaverse driven future. It's not like the 2D internet and our screen and our mouse and our keyboard. It's not like those are going to go away tomorrow. But just like with the adoption of this right here, the mobile phone, which has become the remote control of our lives, as it went parabolic. The adoption of mobile went parabolic very, very fast. As soon as there was 1, 2, 3 killer apps that came to the smartphone, their adoption went through the roof, both in the enterprise and for personal use. And I see this is going to happen very, very rapidly with the metaverse. I think that once people get a taste for those 3D environments, and as the technology for both VR, AR, and XR, mixed reality, as the technology gets better for that, and as the headsets come down in pricing and get better in the experience that they're able to create, and where you get to very rapidly get to a place where, especially with a VR bodysuit and haptics, it starts to become almost impossible to tell the difference between the virtual world and the physical world. Then all of a sudden, I think you're going to get to a place where especially with COVID, it's going to be it's pretty convenient that lots of places are still locked down. You can't go to physical retail stores. You can't go to physical conferences, etc. And we all know that Zoom calls are great. And we all know that shopping via e-commerce websites on a browser is cool and all that, but it is just not the same as physically being there. So I think that this is going to fuel further adoption of the metaverse, so that when we want to go to physical conferences, but we can't physically be there, but we can be there in the metaverse, we can be wearing a 3D headset, we can be wearing a 3D metaverse, enabled bodysuit that has haptic feedback and all the sensory feedback that we want to make us feel like we're there. And the brain is actually very, very easy to fool. The very first time, I'm not a massive gamer. I used to be a gamer when I was a kid, but I'm not a gamer now. And so I never really got into the 3D game thing. I never bought a VR headset, and I never really understood how amazing the 3D tech has gotten over the last few years. But about 3 years ago, I was meeting with a VR studio head here in Auckland, and he owned a VR development studio that was developing VR movie and short video experiences in his studio. He had designers, he had developers, he had technicians there that were creating on behalf of brands, and also under his own brand, he was creating an interactive gaming experience, but it was also a storytelling experience. And when I went to his offices, I tried out some 3D glasses, and he showed me an experience that they were creating out in space. It was a space environment where you were like standing on a space station, and you were like on the edge of this space station. And if you stepped off the edge of this little platform, you'd basically be hurtling out into space. Now, I can tell you, as someone who had virtually zero, I think that might have even been my very first experience of even having 3D goggles on in the first place, or VR goggles on in the first place. I can tell you that my palms started to sweat when I was standing at the edge of this little platform that was attached to this space station. When I looked over the edge and I was looking out into space, my palms started to sweat because it was that realistic. And all I had was just standard VR goggles on at that point. There was no haptic feedback. There was no sense of gravity. There was no, there's no VR bodysuits, etc. At that point, there was no direct brain stimulation, obviously, like what they're trying to build over at Neuralink. And so what I can tell you is that the brain is extremely easy to trick. And I remember back in the day when I was a kid still, I think I must have been about 10 or 12, and I went on Star Tours. That was the first time I'd been in a virtual environment that was so realistic that my brain thought it was real and felt like it was very real. And for those that don't know, Star Tours was a ride. It was a 3D ride that basically you stepped. It was very similar to a flight simulator. We actually stepped into this ride that was it looked like a starship, and you would sit inside of it, and then basically it was on a set of hydraulics, and then they had a massive screen in front of you, like you were racing through space. And it was very realistic because, of course, all the movement and everything was timed to correspond with what was happening on the screen. So it felt like you were in space, flying through space. Very, very cool experience, and felt extremely realistic because, of course, you're getting the body feedback at the same time you're intaking a feedback loop through the eyes visually. And so I said all that to say that the brain is extremely easy to fool when it comes to virtual reality, and it's only going to get better. The tech underlying all of this is only going to get better, and it's not going to be very long before it is going to be extremely difficult to distinguish between the physical world and the virtual world. And at that point, it is going to pave the way for mass adoption everywhere, just like we've all probably thought, we would love to try out the holodeck, on the Star Trek Enterprise. Well, that's what we're going to actually be able to do in these virtual worlds. And what underlies these virtual worlds that are being created is economies, right? So we're going to have independent economies that sit, outside or tangentially linked to the real physical economy. And there are going to be digital goods that are bought and sold only in the virtual space. They are not a physical good. But then we're also going to have scenarios where things are bought and sold in the virtual world that have a connection to the physical world. And that's where NFTs and smart contracts can start to come into play and to bridge the gap between the physical and the virtual world. And so, and when we start looking at cryptocurrencies, and I was never bullish on cryptocurrencies for many, many years because I just didn't see the utility of those cryptocurrencies. And really, until Ethereum came along, there was not a lot of utility in cryptocurrencies apart from maybe perhaps money laundering and some other perhaps more nefarious activities. But if we look at Bitcoin, which you can think of Bitcoin as more of e-gold, because it doesn't have the ability to manage smart contracts on its blockchain. It is really just a digital currency. That's really all it is. It's a store of value purely only. It doesn't have a lot of utility outside of its function as a store of value and due to its scarcity. But when we start looking at the other blockchains, when we start looking at the other cryptocurrencies that underlie those blockchains, you can think of those more like digital silver as opposed to digital gold, because in the physical world, silver is both a store of value, but it's also used massively in the manufacturing of electronics because of its conductivity. Well, you can think of cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin in a similar vein. Those cryptocurrencies are both a store of value, but they also have extreme utility because now with both smart contracts and other underlying technologies of these unique blockchains that offer their own value outside of their store of value, you can actually build web applications, distributed web applications on these blockchains. You can store identity information in a secure way on these blockchains. You can have blockchains built on top of blockchains with the likes of Polkadot, et cetera. And so we're in a situation where the vast majority of the world doesn't yet fully understand the underlying tech of Web3. So they can't yet see, okay, that's great. Jason, you're telling me the metaverse is coming, but how does that help me? I run a retail store, I own a retail brand, or I run a B2B brand. How does that help me? Well, as of right this second, probably not a lot right this second that is immediately applicable to your business, apart from being able to invest in that space and perhaps take as this space continues to get billions of dollar investment, it's going to grow very, very rapidly. It's going to very rapidly start to grow faster than the real economy. And as a result of that, if you want to ride that wave and you perhaps want to dip your toes in the water of buying some NFTs or buying some of the underlying crypto of some of these blockchains and ride that wave of demand, then fantastic. That's something you may want to look into. But in terms of direct applicability to your business today, probably not a lot. But it would be my strong recommendation when Walmart and Nike and Adidas and Microsoft and Facebook and every other, Google and Apple and everybody else, when every single major tech player in the world is building out Web3 technologies and trying to participate in this new world of the internet, it's probably time to at least start building your knowledge around this. Don't necessarily have to execute anything at all. But just like many brands were caught with their pants down in relation to e-commerce, and they were very, very late to the e-commerce game, particularly if they had a large store network at the beginning of when e-commerce really started to hit the mainstream, and they jumped on the bandwagon 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the track, and they missed out on that 5 to 10 years of insane e-commerce growth right at the start before it got insanely competitive online. There's a lot of brands that are still kicking themselves to this day that they missed out on the initial boom years of e-commerce because they thought, oh, this internet thing, it's a fad, it's not a trend. Well, it turned into obviously the biggest technology trend that the world has ever seen. So I'm fearful that a lot of brands will not even look into this Web3 thing because it feels overwhelming. And in 5 years' time, they're going to look back on this and they're going to feel exactly the same way about Web3 that they felt about e-commerce. And they're going to feel like, shit, I could have capitalized on this really early on if I'd have just paid a little bit more attention and tried to figure out a way where this could intersect with my business and could intersect with my audience and could intersect with my brand. So that would be the only thing I would recommend. Is I'm doing a lot of learning. I'm doing a lot of studying. I'm doing a lot of research myself right now because I don't know it all. I don't think anyone can. It's moving too fast. But I'm trying desperately to figure out where the puck is going as opposed to where the puck is now. And I would urge every single one of you to do the exact same thing so that you do not miss out, so that it doesn't catch you unaware, and then all of a sudden you turn around and half of the people that you do business with are living in the metaverse and you don't even know what they're talking about. So that would be my only piece of advice. Look into this, start doing your homework, start doing your research. There's a lot of clever people out there that are talking about this on the daily, that it's a core part of their content play. Gary Vaynerchuk was very, very early to this. He's been talking about Web3 for a very long time. There's lots of other experts that have been working in the crypto space and the blockchain space for a decade or more. They're putting out a lot of content. It's all out there. It's all out there for you to learn, but you've got to dig in, and you've got to try to start connecting the dots for you and your businesses. So that would be my recommendation is to learn, and don't let it scare you. Just like, and try to capitalize on this. It's a very, very exciting space. It's moving very, very fast. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Kimberly, Sam, thank you guys. I should have bumped to 69 for the memes. Jerome, Brooks Metcalf, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Nick Schuring, thank you very much. You say, I'm super interested in the real world impact that NFTs and DAO can totally change business models. 100% agree, especially from a funding perspective. I think that the traditional methods of business funding, whether that be going through major banks, major private equity, major VCs, etc., I think funding through DAOs and I think the SPAC era is probably dead. That felt like a very intermediate play for alternate funding sources and alternate ways of going public and alternate ways of exiting a business as a founder of a business. But I think we're going to go to more distributed methods of funding, more direct investment, more of an equity-based economy. And we're seeing that now already. When we think of the major cryptocurrencies, whether, doesn't really matter whether you're into Solana, whether you're into Polkadot, doesn't really matter what underlying blockchain. If you're investing in, say, the top 10 cryptocurrencies, if you're doing that directly through a major exchange like Coinbase or Binance or whatever, you are buying directly into the future of the metaverse. You're buying directly into the future of Web3 without having to buy a single NFT, without having to make a single investment in building out your brand in the metaverse yet. You can buy into the thesis that Web3 is going to be a big thing in the very near future, and it already is to a degree. And just by easily, and it's more accessible than ever before, and the barriers are coming down, just by investing in the underlying blockchain and token related technology, you can ride that wave. And so this is becoming more accessible than any other major technological advancement in the history of the world. So it's very exciting. James, thank you very much for joining me. Advertising and other metaverse platforms for sure. Absolutely, totally agree. I think digital marketing and advertising it's going to become a skill set in its own right within the metaverse. And you can bet your ass that whilst Facebook is in the process of building out their own metaverse in their old walled garden that they want brands to play in, that at the same time, they're going to be enhancing and extending their marketing platform to be able to allow brands to do things in the metaverse that they can't do today in the 2D internet. So very, very interesting space. Digital sharecropping in the metaverse, totally agree, especially when it comes to, staking. If you own an underlying cryptocurrency, but then you want to provide it as your crypto for staking for other people, for validation, authentication on that particular blockchain using those tokens, then I think, sure, you can make almost like a dividend in that environment, which is really exciting to look at. There's analogs that are out there for everything that's coming in the metaverse. There's already kind of existing analogs in the 2D space. And so I'm trying to see those connections there. Mike Angel, thank you very much. Ethereum is a bigger economy than New Zealand. Yeah, it sure is. And then when you look at Solana and you look at the things that it can do beyond what Ethereum can do, it's very exciting. When you look at the chain-on-chain capability of Polkadot, there's some really, really amazing tech out there that's being built by people that are way, way smarter than me. It's a super cool space to be. So thank you guys. Really, really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you join me in this learning journey about Web3. It's super exciting, and I just can't wait to continue on this journey alongside you guys and share what I learn along the way. Talk to you guys soon. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. Love you all, and talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.